Baby. All right. It appears, even though it's just circling, I'm live. All right. How easy was that? Not very. Welcome to Day Drinking. It is Wednesday, the 22nd of July in the glorious and terrible year of 2020. My name is Wes Hagen. I am the brand ambassador and consulting winemaker for the Miller Family Wine Company. I have just completed 2 full days on Zoom doing our national sales meeting for the Miller Family Wine Company. I got to present and got to do some early day drinking today. But I'll tell you what, even though I presented and showed 3 absolutely delicious wines, I did my best to spit. The irony, of course, being that we were allowed to day drink, but day drinking might get in the way of me doing a day drinking show a little bit further in the day. And if that's not ironic, and the fact that I stopped day drinking, I'm out of more than one job, is hella ironic. So loving where everything is today. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling great about the company. I'm feeling great about our wines. I'm feeling great about our plan. And even in a global pandemic, we are doing a really good job of putting together delicious wines with our winemaking team headed by Jonathan Nagy, as well as our sales team, and all of our regionals are just doing a heck of a job. Oh, Lisa saying greetings from Minnesota. Oh boy, it must be getting warm out there. As soon as Castle Danger um, up north of Duluth starts making their choice pills again, let me know. I will literally fly out to Minnesota just to drink that beer. It is so good. Our friends from Repour are here. And remember those Repour wine stoppers? They look just like this. So what they are is these cool little, amazing little stoppers with a rubber flange on them that don't fall out of almost any bottle. And it has a proprietary material in here. So when you take the protective I don't know, the foil off, it activates it and it starts working. And what it's constantly doing is basically absorbing oxygen within the bottle. So even though this 2018 Chardonnay is a wine that I opened probably 10 days ago, I'm still going to pour it. And I haven't even looked at this wine for 10 days. So let's see how the repour is doing. First of all, you'll notice that the wine is not oxidized. It still has that nice sort of light golden color that I would expect from a current release Chardonnay. It's not showing any brownness, showing no ethyl acetate, showing no volatile acidity. I mean, is it showing volatile acidity? Even a wine that you first open has a very small amount of volatility. Volatility is what helps us smell what's in wine. So volatility is a double-edged sword, and this goes right into our conversation today with Chardonnay. Chardonnay really has to be in a slightly oxidative style because of its time in barrel or its time in aging. In general, Chardonnay is not released like Sauvignon Blanc or Pinot Gris or Pinot Blanc, where it's released just right away. Normally it's aged in oak or in a tank with oak staves or oak beads. It's going to stay there for 6 months, 8 months, a year. I just had a Chardonnay with Jim Clendenin last Friday. If you didn't see that show, I thought it was really, really fun. Tasting that wine, he left that wine in barrel for a full 2 years. So it does have a slight oxidative principle. Although this wine, for a young wine, is still smelling very fresh and very nice. So Santa Maria Valley, what we're going to talk a little bit about today is the places where Chardonnay is grown and how the growing conditions, soil, and cultural practices as they change between different countries and different perspectives influence the final character of Chardonnay. So here we go. I've got Santa Maria Valley in my glass. I think Santa Maria Valley and Santa Rita Hills, two fairly adjacent. They're probably only about 10 miles, 12 miles as the crow flies between the south end of the Santa Maria Valley and the north end of Santa Rita Hills. Santa Rita Hills is a little more tortuous in the way that the cool wind is funneled through the areas between the Purisima Hills, the Santa Rita Hills, and the Santa Rosa Hills. It's pulling that cold air violently through those valleys, and the wind really has a very strong impact. The wind here comes off the Casamalia Hills, comes off the Pacific Ocean, and basically filters down by virtue of northern Santa Maria and almost out in Nipomo, and you basically get the cool air moving through, and there's really just no mountain ranges or anything that are stopping the fog, wind, and cool temperatures from really flowing in. And that's probably why I'm wearing flannel today in the middle of July, almost at the end, 22nd of July. Wow, time really flies. High temperature today in Santa Maria was 73 degrees. So yeah, be jealous. There's no air conditioning in this town, and that's one reason why Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Pinot Blanc, Syrah, cool climate Syrah does so incredibly well here. So when you have that kind of a cool climate, that kind of a cool temperature, old seabed soils, and fairly modern wine growing techniques. The second half of today, we're talking about canopy management and why it matters. I'm going to teach you guys, hopefully in 15 minutes or less, what I think about how farming influences flavor. And if you listen really carefully for the second part of today's show, I think you're going to learn a lot about how farming matters. And the more you know about farming, the more you know about winemaking. The reason why Wednesdays are not just for winemakers, why Wednesdays are not just for viticulturists, I'm trying to explain these concepts so they're perfectly understandable to almost any person who loves wine. And if you can understand them, then you can apply them. And this all goes back to the fact that after I had been making wine for the first time in 1996, 3 months in, I went to a party in LA, and everyone, I had been a high school English teacher, at a party sometimes, oh, so what do you do? What do you do? Oh, I used to say I'm a high school English teacher. And they go, anyways. And they'd go to the next person because for some reason, teaching the youth of America is not an interesting or valued profession, as we're quickly learning, as we're telling our teachers, it's their responsibility to go back to school and deal with kids. If you think kids aren't going to like chase each other, licking their hands and like touching each other, going, COVID, COVID, you don't spend very much time around kids. Got to be careful, and we got to make sure that our teachers are careful. But in Santa Maria Valley, in Santa Rita Hills, we end up usually with quite a bit of acidity in Chardonnay, because Chardonnay holds on to acidity really nice, even through a heat spike. If we get a heat spike at the end of the season, September, October, you'll see the Pinot Noir might go up. If it's 95 degrees, Pinot Noir might get 1 Brix or 1% of sugar per day. So literally we could go from making bubbles at 19 Brix, champagne, sparkling wine, to making a still Pinot Noir, which normally people are picking between 24 and 25 Brix. That can be a week. You can go from sparkling wine to being ready to make still wine in a week during a 96 degree heat spike. That's why we love the cool temperatures here in the Santa Maria Valley. That Pinot Noir in a normal weather pattern where we're 73 to 75, it's usually about 1 Brix to 2 Brix a week. So right now we're just going through veraison. If you measured our Brix right now, you might get 18, maybe 16, 17, as the grapes start changing from hard and green to soft and purple. But we're not talking about Pinot Noir today. It's very difficult for me. I'm sure you've probably noticed sometimes it's very difficult for me to talk about anything but Pinot Noir. It's sort of like, asking a jazz musician to talk about rock and roll. They can do it, but when it's up to them, they're just going to probably default back to jazz, and I think I default back to Pinot Noir. This region for Chardonnay, Santa Maria Valley, may be, to me, the most incredible region in the world to grow Chardonnay. Would include Chablis and Burgundy, where it started, right? And then I would add to that Sonoma Coast, which I still think probably produces some of the most gorgeous, complex, long-lived Chardonnays on the planet Earth. Then I think you probably have to mention Napa, because even though Napa might not be the best place to grow Chardonnay, they still make amazing Chardonnays that get great scores, that are delicious, that are a little bit softer and richer, different flavor profile than you would find in a cool region. And then what else would I add? I think I mentioned Margaret River. Margaret River to me is a very atypical place in Australia to grow grapes. You'd have to probably add New Zealand, and certainly Tasmania is growing some amazing Chardonnay too. The most surprising Chardonnay I had all last year was actually from Idaho. So Chardonnay, even though it just absolutely thrives in tiny little areas, there are certain areas where it is an absolute unbelievable rock star. And I strongly believe, sorry Riesling, I love you too, but I strongly believe that Chardonnay is the most expressive white grape on the planet Earth. As far as what Chardonnay has shown me by drinking everything from Montrachet down to, $5, a $5 cheap glass at happy hour. The $5 glass, it gives me what I want. It has some coolness, it has some richness, it has some unctuousness, and it's delicious. So what I wanted to really focus in a little bit on is how Chardonnay is grown. So in Burgundy, where Chardonnay is really was really born. You'll notice that they have very low trellis, so where they leave the wood to start growing the next year's fruit, basically on a single lead, unilateral, short, semi-vertical shoot position trellis. So what you're going to see is in Burgundy, they're going to let the vines grow up, and then they're going to take those shoots and they're going to weave them in between very simple layers of wire to make a solar panel for absorbing sunlight, turning that sunlight into carbohydrate during the vegetative growth cycle of Vitis vinifera, the grapevine. And then as soon as you start seeing veraison happening and an expansion of the grapes after the lag period where the grapes stay pea-sized for quite a bit of time, then all of a sudden they get larger. And during that time where the grapes start getting a little bit larger, or sometimes a lot larger, is when you're seeing massive accumulations of sugar. Very interesting that there's actually two completely separate pathways within Vitis vinifera. One pathway for vegetative growth cycle, carbohydrates moving through the vine, and then a different cycle. That vegetative growth cycle actually closes. Think of it as a valve. The valve that actually allows carbohydrates to flow through the vine literally closes at veraison and opens up a whole new system for transporting sugar. And that sugar, of course, is going to go to the grapes, which is meant to make the grapes delicious, so animals come and eat the grapes in the wild. But we don't care about animals. We try to keep them away. So we want to talk about ways to, the different ways that Chardonnay is grown. You're going to see wines that are complex, long-lived, out of Burgundy and Chablis. But the system is quite simple, and the vines are incredibly low to the ground. That will come in. That'll be interesting when we talk about Chablis and the Haut-Côtes. The Haut-Côtes are the areas in the Jura Mountains above Burgundy. They're not considered Burgundy. They're considered the Haut-Côtes of Burgundy, so they have to be labeled as such. But there's some very nice wines being made up there, and some incredible wines. If you know the right producer and the right viticulturist, those are some amazing wines. And Chablis, of course, makes some of the greatest Chardonnays in the world. Generally don't use oak, but they do allow the wines to go through malolactic fermentation. Great acid, great verve, a lot of amazingly wonderful flavors. Clean, high acid, long-lived wines. But you go to Burgundy and then you drive over to Chablis, which is pretty close, or to the Haut-Côtes, you notice all of a sudden the wood that is left on the vine to produce next year's shoots is twice to 3 times high. You get 18 to 24 inches on a canopy height in Burgundy, and all of a sudden you're starting to see 1 meter, or even like a little bit more, like sometimes a meter and a half to even more of height. So why in the world, just miles away, do they fundamentally change the trellis of Chardonnay? And the answer is frost. Because frost is radiation frost. I mean, 90% of frost that hit vineyards are radiation frost, which means the frost starts at the ground, and as the cold air begins to accumulate, because space is literally stealing the heat off the earth, because, you know, if there's fog, if there's clouds, you're not going to get really much of a frost event. But when it's clear at night, space just sucks the heat right off the earth. So it gets cold right at ground level. That cold air starts moving downhill until it sticks, and then it starts filling up. So think about a frost event like filling a pool. It's going to be, first frost is going to hit the deep end of the pool. It's going to stay there, and then slowly the pool is going to fill up. And just like anything else, if you have areas adjacent to the pool, if the frost gets all the way into the pool, then it's going to start moving out of the pool and maybe hitting your the plants and your lemon and lime trees. So you got to really worry about frost. So you want to keep your canopy high. The higher the canopy, the more cool air can move downhill. And if you hear that weird sound, it says that my blood sugar and glucose is low, so I'm forced to drink beer. It's a horrible life I live. I've had a very odd glucose day. I tried to eat a sandwich for lunch because I was in a hurry, and I never eat a full sandwich. I eat a full sandwich, and I've just been playing the insulin game today, and I don't like to play the insulin game when necessary. All right, so let's taste a little J.Wilkes Chardonnay before we move on from France. A little bit of brown butter, beautiful sort of yellow plum, sort of green apple character, really bright, beautiful acidity. The only thing that's changed really in 7 to 10 days that this wine has been open with the repour, keeping it nice and fresh, is it does tend to show more of that brown butter rich character. All right, we need to move right along. I would say that in the New World, anywhere you're growing Chardonnay in the New World, we steal Chardonnay from Burgundy and Chablis and we move it to other places. Wherever you take it in the New World, you're going to see a serious, serious influence of a gentleman named Dr. Richard Smart. Dr. Richard Smart wrote a book in 1991, I believe, it could have been 92, called Sunlight into Wine, and fundamentally changed how grapes are grown in the New World and a lot of the time, even in the Old World. He found out that there are certain mathematics and certain scientific principles that can be applied to vineyard management and measuring the effect of vineyard management that fundamentally change the way that wine tastes. If I was going to sum up Richard Smart's work, it would be Dr. Smart figured out that open canopies to put as much sunlight on the fruit and wind in the canopy to dry the canopy out and to encourage sun flecking on the grapes. Here's the most important things about this canopy management stuff. And we're going to be talking about canopy management later on. So Dr. Richard Smart seriously influenced it. So in Napa, Paso, in a warm climate, you're going to imagine that oaky, richy, creamy, yellow apple, pineapple flavors. You're going to have to leave more leaves when you grow that fruit to make sure that the fruit doesn't fry in that hot Paso sun. If you want to see the difference between Paso and Santa Maria, check out the high temperatures today. Look up Paso Robles, California. Look up Santa Maria, California. Boom, 30 degrees today, something like that. So it makes a big difference. And if it's really hot outside, you got to protect the fruit. The cooler the climate, the more leaves you can pull. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then in the cool climate regions, which we'll finish our discussion of Chardonnay with, is going to be Margaret River, Tasmania, New Zealand, Sonoma, Santa Barbara County, Arroyo Grande, San Luis Obispo. All of these areas are very cool climate. And that means because Chardonnay does require some heat to ripen. So even though Pinot Noir, like I said, goes through the roof when it gets hot, Chardonnay takes a nice long ride. Chardonnay holds its acidity beautifully. And in those heat spikes, the vines might actually shut down. The way that carbon dioxide is given off into the environment and the way that vines respire water vapors through the stomata on the back of their leaves. And in a heat spike, if it goes over like 102 degrees, the stomata are going to close and you're going to get no photosynthesis, which means no acid respiration and no sugar accumulation. So sometimes in really hot climates, the Chardonnay self-regulates and stops its process of living and producing sugar just to make sure that it makes it through the day and just doesn't fry. It's sort of like a vine's ability to stave off the worst aspects of heat damage. And that's sort of what happens. So in the cool climate, you can pull more leaves. You can open up the climate. Generally cool climates, because they're going to probably be more oceanic. They're going to probably be closer to the ocean. You could probably assume that cool climate areas will probably have sandier soil as well. So there's a certain style of Chardonnay that emerges from true cool climate. Can you say Chablis is cool climate? Yeah, Chablis is cool climate, but it gets bloody hot in the summer. They just have a more truncated growing season. We have this long, cool growing season that never gets very hot or very cool. In Europe and the old world, it tends to get very cold and very hot. So the growing season is shrunk, and they really hope that they get enough heat during the summer and the fall without the rain and the hail and all the other horrific problems that can happen in various places where Chardonnay is grown. Chardonnay is the number one planted white grape in the world. So there's something around 330,000 acres or something like that. So it's obviously a very popular wine and can be delicious. I didn't get to the Ballard Lane Chardonnay, but for a value Chardonnay under $10 a glass, for about $12.99 to $14.99, we spent about a half an hour at our meeting today talking about that Ballard Lane Chardonnay. 17 Ballard Lane Chardonnay might be the best Chardonnay I've ever had for the money. It is really, 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 really good. You can find it at millerfamilywines.com as well. That's about it for just a quick summation of flavor profile. Oh, by the way, just to finish, warm weather, oaked, rich, creamy, yellow apple, pineapple. Cool climate, you're going to expect to see more quince, lemon, Meyer lemon, as well as like lime blossom, the beautiful aroma of citrus blossom, and green apple. You can also make sparkling wine out of Chardonnay, of course, and in Champagne, where they grow Chardonnay specifically for Blanc de Blanc Champagne. The viticulture would be focused on really making sure that the grapes have a beautiful long hang time and that are harvested with plenty of flavor, because they're going to be picking them at 4 to 5% less sugar by volume than other grapes. So to get the grapes ripe enough to produce flavor and delicious champagne or sparkling wine requires a little bit of different growing season. What I'm going to do, you guys are probably a little bit used to this by now, is I'm going to reset. I'm not going to reset. I figured this out finally. I'm not going to reset Instagram because I don't have to. I'm just going to reset Facebook really quickly, so we can make sure that when we separate and put these videos up online, that they are just easily separatable. And so what are we talking about next? We're going to be talking about, I'm going to give you guys basically a primer, I guess, on canopy management and vineyard management. That is going to change the way that you look at wine. I'm going to teach you guys exactly how farming and what we do in the canopy and what we do to the vine from the beginning of the year to the end of the year ends up changing significantly the flavor of the wine. So Instagram, hang in there, and Facebook, I will be back in 30 seconds. I am not even going to name these today because we're just